Set the Wayback Machine for middle of 1966. Star Trek is in production. They're on the air. It's a really complicated show to do. They're just barely making their deadlines. It's because it's a complicated show and there's all the visual effects. But sitting in the Desilu vaults is a 1-hour television episode called The Cage, the single most expensive Star Trek episode made, but they can't use it because it has an entirely different cast. So the genius of the Menagerie is they took all that footage, mixed it with some additional scenes shot relatively inexpensively, mostly on standing sets, and they came out with this amazing adventure. It broadened the world of Star Trek. It gave us backstory for Mr. Spock. The Cage was made in 1964. The Star Trek, the regular series, wasn't made till '66. There's actually quite a lot of differences. The costumes were different, the sets were different, the Enterprise model was different. The bridge was quite a bit different. So that would have been a real problem if they tried to intercut it or showed it as something in the present day. But by setting it several years prior, it not only did it expand the Star Trek universe, but it actually it added production value because here you believed it was in the past because everything was different.
And if I prefer
to starve, you overlook the unpleasant alternative of punishment. Since you resist the present specimen, you now have a selection.
I'll break out of this zoo somehow and get...
Number one has the superior mind and would produce... Has the superior mind and would produce...
was worth risking my life and Captain Kirk's career.
Personal log, stardate 3013.1. I find it hard to believe the event. Personal log, stardate 3013.1. I find it hard to believe the events of the past 24 hours, or the plea of Mr. Spock standing general court-martial.
How do you plead to the charge of unlawfully taking command of this starship?
Guilty.
Of sabotaging the computers of this vessel and locking it on a course for planet Talos 4?
Guilty.
And of forcibly attempting to transport Captain Pike to that planet?
Guilty.
Why, Spock in those days, and of how the Enterprise had become the first and only starship to visit Talos 4. They had received a distress signal, all an illusion. No survivors, no encampment. It was all a trap. space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization. To boldly go where no man has gone before. The court-martial of Mr. Spock has been convened in closed session. Despite all we can do, images continue to be
The inhabitants of this planet must live deep underground, probably manufacture food and other needs down there. Now, our tests indicate the planet's surface without considering...
The castle was originally a matte painting done by, we believe, Albert Whitlock Jr., who is one of the great matte artists of, in film history. For the purposes here, we asked Max Gable, our matte artist, to do a few minor revisions. There's a little subtle shimmer on the water. But for the most part, it's such an iconic image, we wanted to pretty much preserve it the way it was. If you look, actually, Max added a little more texture to the rocks. He made the castle walls a little more realistic. But for the most part, he tried to preserve the original painting.
Come on. Come. Come. Hurry. It's deserted. There'll be weapons and perhaps food.
This is Rigel 7.
Personal log, stardate 301.
Here we have the scene where supposedly Pike is home, and they're having this lovely picnic, and he's got his horse Tango there, and he even has sugar in his pockets to give his friend. But if you look in the background, you'll notice that there's a city back there, and it's actually the city of Mojave.
For those of you who don't live in Southern California, Mojave is a desert. And so it's kind of interesting that in the 23rd century, there would be this city back there. And if you look at the original matte painting, there is in fact this beautiful city, but there's also a lot of still kind of sandy gray tones back there.
And we did enhance that. Max, our matte artist, took that 60s sensibility, that World Fair sensibility that Matt Jeffries was so famous for, and created an updated city.
We said, we want you to make it lush. You know, the whole idea about Earth in the 23rd century is that it's a paradise, and everything has, you know, aside from the fact that humanity has grown to the state where there's no prejudice and there's, you know, none of these bad traits that we carry with us today, that also the environment has changed. So it was very important for us to make sure that everything looked beautiful and lush and green and living, because that's the planet of the future.
It's a little bit more intense, a little brighter, and hopefully a little more realistic looking.
You want some coffee, dear?
thermos hooked to my saddle. Is it good to be home?
They read our minds very well. Anything else I want, if I cooperate, is that it?
My, it turned out to be a lovely day, didn't it? You can even stay if you want.
But we're not here, neither of us. We're in a menagerie, a cave.
I know you must hate me for that.
Oh, no, I don't hate you. I can guess what it was like.
But that's not enough. Don't you see?
A wild little animal.
I'm beginning to see why none of this has worked for you. You've been home, and fighting is on Rigel. That's not new to you either. A person's strongest